Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Morgan Thorne. I am a BDSM educator, a BDSM practitioner, and a former professional dominatrix. So today we are going to be talking about the Korean Netflix movie Love and Leashes, and I'm going to give like a quick disclaimer here. We aren't going to have any spoilers or any major spoilers. I will talk a little bit about things that happen in the movie, but I'm going to do so in sort of a vague way and in a way that won't give away too much of the story other than they're into BDSM, which I would assume by the title, the fact that you're here, you already know that much. So if you haven't watched it, don't worry, I'm not going to give any spoilers. So this is on Netflix. I'm not sure if Netflix produced it or if they're just, hosting it, streaming it, but it's a romantic comedy, a rom-com, normally not the kind of movie that I like. I am generally more of a horror kind of fan myself, but can't resist when the title is Love and Leashes. So this was based on a webcomic called Moral Sense. So we meet our main characters who work together. We have Jung Ji-woo, and she is in the, marketing department of a big corporation that seems to cater towards children's television or web series, that kind of thing. They keep talking about a YouTuber, a mysterious YouTuber and stuff like that in the beginning. And at work, she meets a new coworker, Jung Ji-hoo, and they kind of have a giggle over the fact that their names are so very close together. There's only one letter in the difference. And of course, this coincidence leads to hilarity and gets the plot moving when Ji-woo is given a box that was intended for Ji-hoo, and so she goes to open it, and he of course sees that this is happening and does the slow motion run to stop her and no kind of thing as she opens it and finds this big spiked collar and leash. And of course he tries to cover for the whole thing, saying it's for his poodle, and she comments the poodle must have a neck and all of this stuff, and so he's very, very awkward, and it's kind of adorable. I will admit that I do find some degree of awkwardness kind of adorable, probably because I am sometimes kind of awkward, as are so many of my friends. So it was kind of cute seeing he's very awkward, and this continues for a little bit. These little glimpses into his world that she doesn't believe what he's telling her. She doesn't believe there's a dog, but she doesn't quite figure out what the actual issue is. So after a couple of more awkward encounters, Ji-hoo finally confesses and says that he is into BDSM, and of course he does so thinking that Ji-woo is also into BDSM, and she isn't. She really has no idea what BDSM is, so of course she's a little taken aback, but she's also a little intrigued, and she decides that she's going to start doing some research on her own about what this whole world is. So at this point, I don't want to give away too much more of the story. This is all very first 15-20 minutes of the movie. It's basically just the setup for everything. But I want to say, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. It was surprising in a lot of ways. I did not necessarily go in expecting to like it as much as I did. A lot of mainstream movies about BDSM are so disappointing. I'm looking at you, 50 Shades. But I have to say, in the first half of this movie, I think there was more actual BDSM than the entire 50 Shades trilogy. So I was pretty impressed. I really did enjoy it. I did have a couple of complaints. One of them is a big complaint. The rest are just kind of small nitpicky things, because the movie was so good as far as its depiction of BDSM and DS and things like that, that I had to really kind of get a little nitpicky at times to find something to critique. The major thing that did really kind of rub me the wrong way is a myth that I see perpetrated a lot, and that is that DS, or domination and submission, has to be separate from romance, that you can't have a romantic relationship that also includes a power exchange or an authority transfer, however you would want to put that. This is a huge misconception. We saw it in 50 Shades of Grey. It's reintroduced in this one. I see all kinds of new people coming into the kink community saying that they want to try kink, but they would rather do it with somebody that they love or they care about, or people coming into the community and thinking that they have to, you know, have this sort of relationship with somebody that's separate and then find somebody to marry, and how am I supposed to do that and have all these multiple relationships if I'm not poly, all this kind of stuff. So that is one of the huge myths that I really hate when people, you know, encourage it. I'll be honest with you, I have been involved in kink for probably 25 years now, more than that. And I know a lot of people in a lot of countries that do a lot of kink. And the vast majority of them either tend to do kink, BDSM, with their primary romantic partner, or they will have a romantic partner that they do this with and then maybe some more casual play partners as well, or they are at least open to the idea of doing this with a romantic partner. There are, of course, some people who choose to do this with no romance involved, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you choose to do, but it's certainly not the majority of people in the kink community. Most of us, the vast majority, do this within a romantic relationship. And they sort of perpetrate another bit of a myth where the idea that specifically I feel like femdom and male sub relationships are completely non-sexual. Now, certainly some of them are. A big part of where we get this idea is usually through professional dominatrixes who, as a rule, don't have sexual contact with their subs, depending on how you define sexual contact. But usually the dominatrix's body is off limits. So while, you know, anal play may be done on the sub or those kind of things, her body is off limits to him. And so we kind of get this idea, especially in female dominant, male submissive relationships, that they're non-sexual. And that, again, is not really true. It can be for some people. Some people choose to do that. But again, often these relationships happen within a romantic relationship, and so there is generally a sexual element. The great thing about BDSM, though, is that you get to do it the way that you and your partner want to. So there are no hard and fast rules. It's all about what you're into. So if you don't want to mix sex or romance, you don't have to. If you do want to have sex and romance as part of the mix, then go for it. It's really up to you. So because of this insistence that there has to be this separation of romance and BDSM, a lot of the interactions that the two characters have felt almost distant at times. They had very obvious chemistry together, and I mean, again, I'm not giving anything away here. You can see it right from the start that they sort of have an eye for each other and that sort of thing, but any chemistry that they would have had in a lot of these scenes sort of becomes awkward because they're trying to do things a certain way, but then they're being like, oh no, wait, I can't do that. I can't have these feelings for this person, and they're trying to hold themselves back. And so it becomes a little awkward, which again can be kind of enjoyable for us as viewers, but it certainly was a bit of an issue for them at certain times. Now, another issue that I have, and this is pretty much across the board with any BDSM movie, they will do this, is that there's sort of these over-dramatic results of the play that they engage in. For instance, they do a wax play scene at one point, and they focus in on his face and the pain that he's in as she's pouring these candles that she bought at a proper, you know, sex shop. And she's pouring the wax on him, and he's like, oh, ow, oh, you know. And it's like, if you're using the proper candles bought at a BDSM or sex shop, usually they're going to be mild enough that it's not going to cause genuine pain. It should feel warm to a little bit hot. It should feel nice. It's a more sensual type of play rather than pain-oriented play. But people who don't do it don't always realize. And then there was another scene where they had gotten into doing some flogging and stuff like that. And you can see that it's just a regular flogger. I mean, it sort of looked honestly like a kind of cheap sex store flogger when she was using it. But then they have a close-up of his back afterwards, and there's like these cuts, and they were like worse than I've seen in a lot of single tail scenes. So like big cuts on his back and stuff, and she's putting some ointment or cleaning them up and that afterwards, and it was like that toy did not cause that damage. And to give people the idea that that toy caused that damage, I think can be really harmful, because that kind of damage is I mean, it's fairly serious, and we don't want to get into something like that without making sure that everybody involved consents, right? So the top and the bottom know that this is a possibility. We consent to it. We have the appropriate, first aid available. We have decided what's going on with the toys so that we don't, share blood on toys with other people, all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot to go into there. So it always bothers me when they show the results of relatively mild BDSM play, and it's like extreme results. So again, I will admit here that I'm totally nitpicking, because there just wasn't that much wrong with the movie, which fantastic. But if I just sit here and I'm like, yeah, it was great, it doesn't give me much of a video, right? Another thing that I did sort of find was a little hard, and I think that again they do this in movies because this is the glory, like the fun, glorious part of BDSM is the play, but it was very, very focused on the play between the two and not on an actual DS relationship. And so they had like a 3-month contract and things like that. Contracts are really not commonly used in the BDSM world. Some people enjoy them, and if it floats your boat, then by all means. But generally speaking, contracts, I mean, they're certainly not legally binding, and they generally, unless you find them to be something fun or sexy, most people don't use them. I know very, very few people that are really into contracts in any real way. But they did that, and so I found that their relationship, while it was really realistic as far as play goes, for the most part, with a few exceptions that I mentioned earlier with over-dramatic results, but it was fairly representative as far as the play side of a relationship goes, but it was not representative as far as DS dominance and submission goes. So that was just one of those, again, little things that kind of was like, yeah, okay, but no. So finally, a big thing here, and this was another sort of more serious complaint that I had, is that you should not get involved in any kind of romantic or sexual relationship or kink relationship with somebody at work. It's just a bad idea. You don't shit when you eat. Don't do it. Don't get involved with folks at work. If you get caught, it's going to go bad for you. It's just not fun. One of the things that I would like to have seen a little more of is a little more communication between the two of them, especially before they played, and talking about the things they would like to explore or that sort of stuff. I really would have liked to have seen a bit more communication. However, I think they did a really good job of depicting how people that are brand new to the kink scene, which both of these characters said that they were brand new to actually doing it. The Jihu had been researching and online in the kink community for a little while, but he hadn't actually done anything before. And then, of course, Jiwoo was brand new when Jihu introduced her. So I found that their explorations and their fumbles were very realistic. And I actually really enjoyed that, watching it. And even if they weren't newbies, some of those stumbles were totally realistic. A perfect example and I was so glad that they included this in the movie, was at one point Ji-woo had the idea of handcuffing them together so that he had to stay right by her side the whole day. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it didn't really go as well as she hoped it would. And it was a perfect example of having a great idea and being like, yeah, this will be so much fun. And then the execution of it just isn't quite what you imagined. We've all, I'm sure, been in that situation. I know I have. I've had grand ideas, and then you get into the middle of it and you're like, none of this is working the way I thought it would. What the hell is going on? I don't know what I'm doing. You know? So it happens to all of us. It happens to the best of us. Trust me, it's not a big deal. Laugh it off. But they certainly have this sort of experience, and she feels very bad about it, but I'm not going to tell too much more about that, just because I don't want to, again, ruin the story. And for those of you guys in the comments, please, no spoilers either. Seriously, don't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. But I thought that was, again, really realistic, especially for people that are new, but even for those of us who've been doing it for 25 years. Those kind of things still happen sometimes. It's, you know, or sometimes, you know, your equipment just isn't working out as well as you hoped it would, or whatever it is, it happens. All right, I'm going to leave this review on one of my absolute favorite parts of the movie, and that was that there were a lot more kinky people in this little world than you expected right at the beginning. There were so many kinky people by the end within the little friend and work group, and that was fantastic to see how many of them there were. And it just goes to show you that kinky people don't always stand out like a sore thumb. They don't always they aren't always the ones that you would expect. You know, most of us don't walk around in high heels and corsets and leather all day, every day. We look like normal people, or in my case, this. But, you know, we just look like regular people most of the time. Those of you who've seen Sage would never know, if you saw him walking down the street, you would never know that he's necessarily into this sort of thing. And I have all kinds of friends, you know, people that are grandparents, people that are young, people that are everything in between. Professionals, you know, alternative folks, whatever, and you never know who's going to be into it and who isn't. And I liked that there was, by the end of the movie, it seemed like the kinky people were coming out of everywhere. It was a lot of fun. But anyways, in the end, if you want a, you know, enjoyable evening, watch a very light, kind of funny, sweet movie, I would highly suggest Love and Leashes. I really did enjoy it for the most part. I would give it like 4 out of 5 stars for sure. I did really enjoy it more than I thought I would. Sage agreed when we watched it together. He thought it was really cute as well. And yeah, overall, it was a great movie. So guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. I will see you in the next one.